Welcome guys in my tutorial about painting glossy lips for my cozy. So it's basically a reflective surface. We usually call it non-metallic metal, but we really can use it to any kind of reflective surface, and in this case our lip gloss is reflecting a lot of light. First of all, I wanted to show you on a reference picture how it looks, and I went for Google search for glossy lips, and I found a site for meme makeup and it's really a random site, but it has a nice picture which you can see here, and I decided to study it. So as you can see, it's a red base with, I would say, two kinds of highlights. The ones marked here are the primary highlights, which are placed here in the most highlighted parts of lips. The second highlights are placed on the bottom side, so I would say that they are ambient lights. You can see they are brought from other surfaces mostly, and some of them are reflected from the top parts of the lower lip. They are meant to be more subtle, but they bring that something extra to the end result. You will see in a second. And we have shadows here, which are very subtle, I would say. They are placed mostly in the lip corners and in the middle part of the lip. I decided to make a painting plan or the sketch in Photoshop. You can see here the primary highlights I decided to go for, and they are placed mostly on the upper part of the lips, and they are meant to make them more plump. Here are the secondary highlights. I placed them on the bottom sides of the lips. So I would call them the ambient highlights, because they are mostly meant to show that it's really reflecting light from all around, because reflective surfaces will reflect light, not only light from the main source, but also from the from around. And here are the shadows I decided to go for, and the biggest surfaces will be in the lip corners, and it will really round up the lips, make them look very plump, and it will contrast nicely the highlights and make everything look interesting. Here are my paints I decided to use. The base color is deep red from scale 75. For highlights, I will mix Tenere yellow into the deep red. In the places where I used the purest Tenere yellow, I will add a little bit of white, just so some little dots to enhance the strongest highlights. And for most of the shadows, I'm just mixing Eldan Hill Violet into the deep red. And I used Midland Flash from P3 for the base skin in the whole miniature. So with the Midland Flash, I'll just do the corrects. We are starting with the base, just flat base shape, filled on her lips. We are starting with mixing the deep red with Tenere yellow, and just playing with placing the primary highlights here. On on the wet palette you can see some other colors I'm using on the whole miniature, just because it's a part of the painting process of painting the whole miniature. So I didn't clean the wet palette. I'm blending the two paints on my wet palette, adding a little bit of water, and I'm drying the paint on my finger, and just to reduce the paint flow from my brush and be able to control the placement of the pigments better. I'm starting to place the highlights, trying out the shade I just created. I'm trying to reflect the painting scheme I showed you before. I will play around with the shape of the lips. The shadows and highlights we are putting on the miniature are changing the sculpt a lot. So the preparation, the concept of the placement of the highlights I've shown you before is a theory, and we just have to adjust it later to the sculpt. So we can see here I'm just creating the initial placement of the highlights. I'm changing it a little bit in comparison to the sketch I've shown before, but it's not really that much. I'm using the mid-tone of the highlights to sketch all of the highlights, and I will proceed with using the a more pure Tenere yellow to create the primary highlights. And it's just a sketch. I just want to sketch the volume, and in a second I will glaze it with semi-transparent deep red layer, just to create the blends. I'm also sketching the shadows here. And the glazing. So everything I just painted and glazed over is not that visible, but it's creating the initial blends for me. And I'm repeating the process I just made. And I will do it 2-3 times, and then I will continue refining everything. I noticed that her lips look like they are too much like Botox lips. So I'm starting to play with more of the shapes, working on the shape of the center of her bottom lip, to create just a little bit of a pout, but not the effect of the plastic lips. and the glazing again, building up the layers of the blends and highlights. I'm reinforcing the highlights again and trying out their shapes. I'm leaving the middle of her lip darker to create like the Angelina Jolie lip effect, like with the crevices of the lips. I'm not sure about the overall shape, so I decided to mark her upper lip more like the cupid bow. And she is still too plastic in my opinion. So I'm thinking about different solution about how to fix everything. Doing some corrects on her lip line, trying to blend the cupid bow and her upper lip color. I'm reaching now for the shadows, and I decided to make her upper lip wider because I thought that it may reduce the Botox lips effect, and I was right. See, it's much better now. And I just have to work around with my highlights just to make it right. correcting her upper lip to make her cupid bow more pronounced and make her lips a little bit smaller, because I think that they were too big. I'm adding the flesh tone to my wet palette to do the corrects. I'm just correcting the upper lip and evening out the lip line. It's more comfortable for me to do it the upside down, so I just move the miniature. I'm going back and forth with everything, looking for the right shapes and the right blends and the right values. Here I decided to create more space under her lower lip to mark the flesh tone. Basically, it will make her lower lip look smaller, and I think that more natural, because I really don't want her to look overdone. Even the smallest changes tends to add a lot, so I'm very considerate with my moves and my progress. Some things may look good, some things may look bad, and it's just worth trying out and seeing what works and what doesn't. Evening it out, polishing it for the finish. It's good to assess everything in the end. Right now, lips are one of the last things I'm painting on this miniature, so I know how the highlights and the light is placed on the miniature, and how values of all of the colors on the miniature work together. And now I'm adding the purer white, I would say, for the finishing glossy / highlight effect. And painting up the lip stain. It's really not that much work. The base shape is just red crescent with some red glazes over it to make it uneven. And now I'm just adding some white blicks and trying to create the rough tone up shape. Something like a tire print, but less regular. And that's it. Basically, it's not that complicated. It's basically, I would say, that is some kind of non-metallic metal, which is just the reflecting surfaces, but in red and on the lips.